She was bringing forth children for Elkanah. And Hannah, who seems to be the favored one, was not bringing forth children. So it seems as though the Lord had shut up her womb. And the husband had to speak to her and said, said to her, then Elkanah, her husband, then said Elkanah, her husband, to her, Hannah, why weepest thou, and why eatest thou, and why is thy heart grieved? Am not I better to thee than 10 sons? You see, so Elkanah had to, speak up to his wife, Hannah. And I was saying we don't really know what was happening in the household. Maybe he was really gentle at her, and he spoke to her in such a way, Hannah, why are you upset? Or maybe there was so much contention going on in the household that he had to really come forth and he had to say, Hannah. We don't really know. It depends where we are according to how we may be depict that family situation, that household situation. But what I'm hearing is that there are different levels of faith. Because, Elkanah married Peninnah and Hannah had children. So if it says here in the first chapter of Samuel, verse 2, and he had 2 wives. The name of one was Hannah. So Hannah came first in the name. And the name of the other was Peninnah. And Peninnah had children, but Hannah had no children. You see? So there we have 2 women, 2 wives, and I'm going to say that already you can see different faith levels taking place, because and this man went up out of his city yearly to worship and to sacrifice unto the Lord of hosts in Shiloh, and the 2 sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, the priest of the Lord, was there. So I said that's a throw-in on the beginning of the story. So it says that and when the time was that Elkanah offered, he gave to Peninnah his wife, and to all her sons and her daughters portions. But unto Hannah he gave a worthy portion, for he loved Hannah, but the Lord had shut up her womb. And her adversary also provoked her sore, for to make her fret, because the Lord had shut up her womb. Yeah. So something has happened along the way that Peninnah was bearing children, and Hannah had her womb shut up. And the thing is, her husband gave her a worthy portion of love, and Peninnah just got the portion and her children. So though Peninnah was very fruitful, she bared her children, she didn't get that worthy. So there's a faith in Elkanah, the husband. There's a faith in Peninnah and a faith in Hannah at different levels. And am I saying to you that Peninnah had faith, so she had children? Hannah had no faith, so she didn't have children? And Elkanah, he had faith in his Lord, so he kept going up for worship, and he loved Hannah, though she did not bring forth his children. You see? So there's different levels of faith, you see. And I'd like to say in this instance, yes, Hannah didn't have faith. Didn't have the type of faith that was required of her in this instance, you see. And in the previous reading, I was saying that the 2 women, the 2 feminine spirit, I call the pure spirit, the goddess, I could say, yes, represents where we are now on in spirituality and on the earth. And I'm saying that the earth is undergoing a spiritual transformation, and we are evolving into spiritual being. But according to the readings of the Bible, through the various prophets like Moses and Jeremiah, the Lord has spoken of the first covenant, the first promise, and then the second promise, you see. And it's talking about when his people shall go and possess the land, and that he will make them fruitful. Okay. And now then there is a second promise where the Messiah shall come. you see. But in that, according to the prophet of Jeremiah, that we shall, and if I go over, I'd better read it in its accuracy. If I go over to Jeremiah 23:5, it says here, Behold, the days come, says the Lord, that I will raise unto David a righteous branch, and a king shall reign and prosper, and shall execute judgment and justice in the earth. In his days Judah shall be saved, and Israel shall dwell safely, and this is his name, whereby he shall be called the Lord our righteousness. Okay? Therefore, behold, the days come, says the Lord, that they shall no more say, The Lord liveth, which brought up the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt, but the Lord liveth, which brought up and which led the seed of the house of Israel out of the north countries, and from all the countries whither I had driven them, and they shall dwell in their own land. Okay? They shall dwell in their own lands. So this is a promise that the Lord has made. And I began to deduce that Peninnah represent the old promise, the first covenant, and Hannah spiritually represent the new promise, the new covenant that we are about to enter into. But we have to see and experience the completion of the old promise, that is to go in, possess the land, and multiply, be fruitful. However, the Lord said that he will bring forth all his people from wherever he has scattered them and subjugated them. Okay? So wherever he has scattered them, they're bearing fruits. They're getting a worthy portion. Yes. But when he brings his people forward now, they will come into his true love and get a true worthy portion. And it may seem like his people are not bearing any fruits right now because he's scattered them. And I'm talking in another connotation here. It seems like he has scattered his people and they're unknown. They're subjugated. I'm going to say they're imprisoned under other dominions, other domination. You know, they have been ostracized, they have been brainwashed, they have been conformed. They don't even know their own minds, you see. So, so the Lord is saying, I'm going to take them out of their captivity and bring them to know me and to come into the free liberation, the freedom of me. And they shall come into my true love, yes. But then they will have to have a certain amount of love, of faith, to be able to enter into this type of achievement. They will have to know their true purpose in me. So let me try and keep my speech together this morning here and not go too highfalutin in words here. So the verse that I wanted to look at, it says, then Eli, verse 17, then Eli answered and said, Go in peace, and the God of Israel grant thee thy petition that thou hast asked of him. I wanted to sort of talk around this here. And let me just go over, I just want to go over to the Gospel of St. Mark 5:34, and it talks about the woman that had the bleeding issue. And it says, And he said unto her, Daughter, thy faith has made thee whole. Go in peace and be whole of thy plague. Right? And it's talking about verse 24 of Mark chapter 5. And Jesus went with him, and much people followed him. And a certain woman, that's verse 25, which had an issue of blood 12 years, and had suffered many things of many physicians, and had spent all that she had, and was nothing bettered, but rather grew worse. When she heard of Jesus come in the press behind, and so when she heard of Jesus, came in the press behind, and touched his garment, for she said, If I may touch but his clothes, I will be whole. And straightway the fountain of her blood was dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of that plague. And Jesus, immediately knowing in himself that virtue had gone out of him, turned him about in the press and said, Who touched my clothes? And his disciples said unto him, Thou seest the multitude thronging thee, and sayest thou, Who touched me? And he looked round about to see her that had done this thing. But the woman, fearing and trembling, knowing what was done in her, came and fell down before him, and told him all the truth. And he said unto her, Daughter, thy faith hath made thee whole. Go in peace, and be whole of thy plague. So I'm going to try and keep this concise here, folks, and I ask you to bear with me. So I'm talking about the faith levels of parties of people when we are together. And it says here, going back to the book of Samuel, chapter 1, in verse 6, it says here, and her adversary also provoked her sore, for to make her fret, because the Lord had shut up her womb. Okay, the Lord had shut up her womb. So Hannah felt out of kilt because she sees herself as a woman, she sees herself as a wife, and her duty is therefore to bear fruit, to bring forth children for her husband. Yeah, and if it's happening to the other wife, why shouldn't it happen to her? You see? And so now we have to question her faith. Whether she questioned her faith came a little bit later when her husband addressed her. You see? And she became embittered by the situation. You see? And I was saying, Hannah took her mind off the Lord, and even though every year they went up and out of his city yearly to worship and to sacrifice unto the Lord of hosts in Shiloh, Hannah still lacked that faith in what was taking place in her in the Lord. You see, she lacked that faith, and she looked on the adversary. So I was saying that she now had a spirit of covetousness. She wanted what somebody else had instead of looking at what she had. You see, instead of looking at what she had, or can I put it this way, at looking at her own relationship with the Lord. Because each of us is accountable. And the Lord is our maker. And let me just go over to Psalms 90 here. Just remind you the word of the Lord to the psalmist here. He says, Lord, thou hast been our dwelling place in all generations, before the mountains were brought forth, or ever thou hast formed the earth and the world, even from everlasting to everlasting, thou art God. Thou turnest man to destruction, and sayest, Return, ye children of men. For 1,000 years in thy sight are but as yesterday, when it is past, and as a watch in the night. Okay, and okay, for all our days are past. I wanted to read, it says, where we bow down to the Lord. Maybe I've read it's in another verse here. Okay, it says, I wanted to say that he is our maker and that we are to bow down to him. And it's in Psalms, I read it this morning. Okay, Psalms 95. Oh, come, let us sing unto the Lord. Let us make a joyful noise to the rock of our salvation. Let us come before his presence with thanksgiving and make a joyful noise unto him with psalms. For the Lord is a great God and a great King above all God. And the verse 6, Oh, come, let us worship and bow down. Let us kneel before the Lord our Maker, for he is our God, and we are the people of his pasture and the sheep of his hand. Today, if you will hear his voice, harden not your heart as in the provocation and as in the day of temptation, in the wilderness. Okay, when your father